So far we talked about, we went over our introduction. Our introduction gave us some different categories of things. If you remember that introduction there, which has been worked on since, Yani. Then we started talking about knowledge. We said there's the uncreated knowledge of God, and then there's the created knowledge of creatures. And then we talked about categories of that. We produced religious texts here. One thing you've probably noticed is the religious texts that are being presented to you in these topics. Because this is not philosophy. Philosophy gives regard to the mind without giving regard to the revelation. And this is not taken from philosophy and then supported with ayat of the Quran or hadiths of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. That's what some people do who are impressed with philosophy, or they are impressed with some other modern ideas. Some people would even bring ayat from the Quran to prove Big Bang Theory, or even to prove evolution. So that's not what happened here. So here we talked about the different types of knowledge, in particular, created knowledge, that is, in particular, necessary knowledge versus inferred knowledge. That's most of what we're going to be talking about here. Then we started talking about the causes of knowledge, and we read the section on the senses. And then one of the causes of knowledge is accurate news. So we started reading the section on accurate news. Yani, the broad topic of accurate news. Now we want to talk about accurate news with more detail. This is where we are now. We want to talk about this case of mutawatir news. And we'll see how far Allah enables us to get. So, what we have here, the translation offered for mutawatir is successive mass narration. So, mutawatir, that's what you would call some news that has a description or an attribute. The attribute of this news is called tawatur. Tawatur is the attribute of the news. Tawatur, it is the successive mass reporting that news has. Some news has. So when news has this attribute called tawatur, then you would describe that news as mutawatir. Tawatur cannot possibly be false. Why is this important here? Because we're talking about knowledge. Knowledge means realizing something as it is. And knowledge being a realization that complies with reality, then it means that we're talking about a realization that's 100% correct. Has no room, no percentage of falsehood, even possibly. It's not possibly false. Don't forget, you might believe something is true, and it might actually be true, but for you, it could be false. That means you don't have the clues needed to determine that it is 100% true. You could think you're so close to the truth, but you still have to give room to falsehood. This is part of the important lesson in all of what we're talking about now. Someone sent me a question about something that someone else said, a third person said. So this third person said something, I have deduced something, and now I have knowledge here about such and such issue. So the person showed me with this talk. So it wasn't a deduction that arrives at knowledge at all. Not at all. That's what the person thought. In that person's own delusion, they thought they achieved knowledge by their deduction. So I commented. So the person shared my comment with the other person. The other person said, I don't know why he thinks this. Why is he saying this? He doesn't even know all the facts that I have. See, you need to be able to put things in this range that I'm sharing with you, which we already talked about. And we're going to come back and talk about it more. You have knowledge, knowing something as it is, realizing something as it is. That's one end of a spectrum. The whole other end of that spectrum is ignorance, not knowing something. And in the middle of that spectrum is doubt. That's 50-50. You don't know. Did Zayd go to the store? He didn't go to the store. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. You don't have enough proof or clues that make it more or less likely to you that he went to the store. You don't suppose he went to the store, nor are you skeptical that he went to the store. But if you had enough clues that make you suppose he went to the store, then you think he went to the store. And maybe he really did, but you don't know for sure that he did. So you don't have knowledge here, even though in reality he did go to the store, and what you think is true actually is true. But you don't know 100% for sure. So you think it's true. Or you might be skeptical that he went to the store. So maybe he did go to the store, but you don't have enough clues to substantiate for you or to even make you suppose that he did. You think he probably didn't. To you, it's more likely that he didn't. You're skeptical. I'm saying all of this to highlight for you the meaning of Tawatur cannot possibly be false. That person was saying, what I arrived at cannot possibly be false. And the person doesn't have even an idea, really, a big idea of what they're doing here. In fact, I'm afraid that person listened to my lessons and then went like that so far to think they arrived at knowledge and what they were talking about. And they were so far. Tawatur cannot possibly be false. This type of news. In fact, it promotes necessary knowledge, like we talked about last week in the introduction of this issue. Necessary knowledge. How do we know it promotes necessary knowledge? It's going to come. What's necessary knowledge? Knowledge is what you know without needing to think about it. How do you get necessary knowledge? How do you get necessary knowledge? By sound senses, by successive mass narration, that's what we're talking about today, and sometimes by the mind. We're going to talk about that when we come back to it, inshallah. We did talk about it before. We're going to come back to it, inshallah. So successive mass report promotes necessary knowledge. This means that this type of news installs knowledge in you, imparts knowledge on you, without need to think and deduce. We find within ourselves the sure knowledge. This word sure, that's just for emphasis. If we take it out, it doesn't change the meaning. We find within ourselves the knowledge. But when we say sure knowledge here, we mean something more than supposing. We find within ourselves the sure knowledge of the existence of Mecca or Baghdad, even if you never went there before. And of the existence of Hitler and Napoleon and other people like that. The Pharaoh, for example, and even Jesus and Moses. Their news reached us until today by Tawatur. There would, though, be some silly people who aren't sure that Jesus existed. And our Sheikh says even their miracles, the miracles of Jesus reached us by Tawatur, not just because something written in the Bible, but actually because it was from the time of Jesus reported on a mass scale, these miracles that Jesus performed. Based on the sheer numbers of reporters whose gathering to conspire would have been a supernatural phenomenon. Yani, the sheer number of people who report the existence of Hitler because of the events that happened. Had this been a hoax, had the existence of Hitler been a hoax, Yani, the only way that could be, the only way someone might say to me, is it intellectually impossible that the existence of Hitler is a hoax? So the answer is no, it's not intellectually impossible. But it is normally impossible. Yani, the only way for the news about Hitler to be a hoax was that the conspiracy about him was a supernatural phenomenon. Supernatural. So we're not going to say, maybe the news about Hitler is a supernatural phenomenon, and so we have room to doubt that he really existed. Maybe the tales of this guy is like Santa Claus. So if somebody were to say that, I'd say to him, you're being silly, or you're being stubborn. The proof that it indeed promotes necessary knowledge, that Tawatur promotes necessary knowledge, is that knowledge is born for who investigates the issue as well as for someone who does not. Like a child or a commoner who is incapable of performing the required investigation or formulating premises and conclusions. What does this mean? You said, why wouldn't that be mentally impossible? Do you know the definition of mentally impossible? So it doesn't fit the definition of mentally impossible. Mentally impossible is what the mind cannot conceive its existence. So it doesn't fit this definition. If you know the definition of mentally impossible, then, and you want to explore this question of yours, then you need to look into the definition of mentally impossible. Think about your question. See what angle makes you not see why, and then bring it out for you, Yani. Because really, your question is going to make me investigate it. But you know the definition, so you need to investigate it so that you, Yani, so that your question can be clearer. Definition of mentally impossible is that which the mind does not conceive its existence. So to say, for example, that Hitler's existence is a hoax, it's not mentally impossible. So, Yani, someone might, don't you know some people think Muhammad doesn't exist or didn't exist? They say, how do you know even Muhammad existed? So it's not mentally impossible for someone, Yani, for some news about a person to be a hoax. Like Santa Claus, he doesn't exist. Or some people say, like if you talk to an atheist, they'll say to you, so then according to you, unicorns exist. Sure, he doesn't have proof that unicorns don't exist. It's not mentally impossible that unicorns exist, even if you never saw one. So if you want, you can think about that, and you can bring out your question more if you want. I'm going to continue now. Okay, Barakallahu feek. So the proof that tawatur indeed promotes necessary knowledge is that knowledge is born for who investigates the issue. If he investigates the issue, that means not. If someone got knowledge by investigating the issue, then that's not necessary knowledge. That's inferred knowledge. He looked into his proofs and then he arrived at a conclusion and he gained knowledge through his investigation. So that's not necessary knowledge. But what about someone who doesn't do such investigation? Knowledge is also born for, when it comes to this type of news, for someone who does not investigate the issue, like the child who knows that the Kaaba exists. He knows that. He's not guessing or imagining, or that Muhammad existed. Or the commoner who is incapable of performing the required investigation, or formulating premises and conclusions, like that's the case of the small child, doesn't formulate premises and conclusions, or is not an expert at that yet. Maybe he can just do some addition, single digit addition, maybe, the small child. And maybe he can do some subtraction. Not much more. So how is it that these children who are not experts at formulating premises and conclusions, and also who are incapable of performing the required investigation, as well as the commoner who's not an investigator, he's not a scholar, how is it that he knows without ever seeing the Kaaba that it exists, and without ever seeing Muhammad that he existed? Despite that they never witnessed these matters, and despite that they don't have the required skills for investigation, despite that they're not experts at formulating premises and conclusions, they do indeed have correct knowledge of the Prophet's existence, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and his performance of miracles, and of the Kaaba, and of other things. This is the proof that tawatur promotes necessary knowledge. Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani said, I'll just read the English. So, if these four conditions are gathered together, four conditions he talked about in his book, this is from Nukhbatul Fikr, this is from the explanation of Nukhbatul Fikr. But he recapped. Which are? Those four are: for the big number to make it normally impossible for them to have conspired to a lie. The big number of reporters. For this big number of reporters to make it normally impossible for those reporters to have conspired to a lie, or to have coincidentally agreed about a mistake, some falsehood. It's mentally possible that one or two people might arrive at the same falsehood coincidentally. They might think, they might be deluded to come to a conclusion which is false. One person could come to a conclusion about something that's false, and another person could come to the same conclusion. So they both agreed to a falsehood that doesn't make it true because they agreed about it. But there's a point where there's so many reporters about some incident that it's not normally possible that they all coincidentally agreed on a falsehood. And it's not normally possible that they have gathered to conspire to this lie. Or to a lie. That they have gathered to conspire to a lie. So in some previous lessons on this topic, I mentioned for you, even if you just take one person who's lying, or two people or three people who are lying, with enough questions, you'll be able to cut through the lie, discover the lie. In fact, the more people you put into the conspiracy, the easier it's going to be to pull the lie out. They're not going to be able to stay consistent. Whether you question them one by one, or if you question them all together, after they agree to their lie, and then you bring them all together, if you know what to ask, Yani, like let's say you're a judge, or less than a judge, but you just know how to investigate. If you're an investigator, Yani, or you're a person with half of a brain, and you had 3 or 4 or 5 people who are lying about something, all you have to do is start asking questions one by one, one by one. It will come out. So that's why it's normally impossible for so many people to have conspired to a lie, or to coincidentally agree to a mistake. So he said, if these 4 conditions are gathered, which are for the big number to make it normally impossible for them to have conspired to a lie. Let's go ahead and number these. That they narrated that from their likes, meaning, what's their likes? Their likes means the big number. So it has to start, the report has to start from a large number of reporters. This large number of reporters narrates what they witnessed to the next generation, the next level. And they are as numerous as their informants. And then they, in turn, tell the next generation, who are as numerous as they are, and so on. From beginning until the end. And the source of what they are reporting was something witnessed. This is a condition. So it's not based on a deduction or the like. Only something witnessed. Only something witnessed. To be mutawatir has to be a witnessed event. And 4, Ibn Hajar says, and added to that is their news imparting knowledge on who hears it. So this doesn't mean that just, let's say something is confirmed, mutawatir report, has so many narrators from the time of the incident at hand. We're not saying that if one person heard one report about this issue, that this is going to impart knowledge on him. Rather, he's going to hear that report over and over and over again. He's going to hear that report over and over and over again, such that it imparts knowledge on him. But you could imagine here, you could probably conceive here that someone would hear something over and over and over again, and then he thinks it's true because he heard it over and over and over again. And it wouldn't be true at all. So that's why tawatur has conditions, not one condition. It's not just only a lot of people said it. That's not the condition only. It's not just that you heard something over and over and over again. That's not also all. So if you want, memorize what Ibn Hajar says here. I saw Sheikh Samir in more than one occasion testing the people about what tawatur is, and they always fail his questioning that I've seen. They will always miss something, one condition or another. Ibn Hajar says, this is the success of mass narration. And whatever was devoid of imparting knowledge is merely a famous report. He means, if there were a report that comes from a lot of people, but it's not enough to impart knowledge. So what might it impart? Less than knowledge. It might make you confident. You might only suppose that it's true because you heard it so much, but it doesn't impart knowledge. He's saying then this is a famous report. When he says famous here, this is hadith terminology. Therefore, he says, every successive mass narrated report is a famous report, but not vice versa. Not every famous report is successive mass narration. Yani, a report could be famous and it's false altogether. Being a famous report doesn't mean that it's true. Ibn Hajar says, and it could be said that if these four conditions are present, then it dictates imparting knowledge. And that is the case usually. Yani, he's saying, Tawatur will impart knowledge. There's something in here in this statement that's not clear for me. Which is, he says, if these four conditions are gathered, then it's going to be a case of tawatur. So he says, what are they? For the big number to make it normally impossible for them to have conspired to a lie, that they narrated it from their likes in terms of numbers, from the beginning until the end. And the source of what they are reporting was something witnessed. And he says, and the fourth condition is that the news imparts knowledge. But then he says, it might be said that if these four conditions exist, then it will impart knowledge. So there's something here that's not clear for me. Maybe you're catching what's not clicking for me here. Looks like as if there's a slip here. But what he's saying is, it is said that successive mass report is going to impart knowledge. Not that another condition is that it imparts knowledge, but rather that if it is tawatur, it will impart knowledge. He says, and that is the case usually. However, the installation of knowledge from such reports could miss some individuals for some reason or another. Some people might not get knowledge from something that is successive mass report, like they haven't heard it enough. That's the case of people who don't believe in Prophet Muhammad's miracles. A Christian would say to you, how is Muhammad a prophet? And then you'd say to him, he did miracles. So you say, what miracles did he do? Then if you told him, for example, you say, well, there was the time when they wanted to kill him. They surrounded his house and he walked out of his house and he put dirt on all their heads while they were still standing there, and he left them standing there still waiting for him. And there was the time when he made a dead lizard come back to life. And there was a time when the a tree stump in his masjid started moaning because he didn't lean on it anymore. So the Christian might say, I never heard of any of this. Okay. Doesn't mean it's not true, though. You said, is it possible that the knowledge was imparted, but they were only confident for some reason? No, because if they were only confident, that means that the knowledge was not imparted. Knowledge, real knowledge, is more than mere confidence. Because confidence means still possibly false. And you say, I'm confident means I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. But when you have knowledge about something, you're not wrong. Ibn Hajar says, and by this, the definition of tawatur has become clear. Tayyib. Now, you might have heard this lesson before about tawatur. But there's something very important for you. There's something very important for you here. This, first of all, this is, like we said before, this is all Islamic knowledge. None of this is taken from the kuffar. None of it is taken from the philosophers or anyone else, but the Muslim scholars. The kuffar have their own fundamentals. They have their own, what they call, scientific method, and their own methods of doing things. I suggest, brothers and sisters, that this knowledge, you use it and you make it a part of yourself, and you argue by Islamic standards. Don't argue by non-Muslim standards. You said, wouldn't it be that if the individual were confident and correct, however, he lacks certainty for some reason, that it would be knowledge? No, it would not be knowledge, because he's only confident. He doesn't have knowledge. He only has confidence. That's the case of the mujtahids. They make ijtihad to the best of their ability. They think they're right, or else they wouldn't have stopped. They would have kept going. So they have confidence. The mujtahids say, I'm right, and he's wrong, but I could be wrong and he could be right. And he's wrong and I'm right, but he could be right and I could be wrong. So they don't have knowledge here, not according to this definition. They don't have more than confidence. So I said what I said to you about using Islamic standards as an introduction for now what I'm going to say to you. So it says here, thus, if the original source were not a witnessed event, like dinosaurs, not a witnessed event. So there's a footnote. Finding petrified remains is not witnessing dinosaurs. So the kafir is going to tell you, yeah, we witnessed the dinosaurs. We have their fossils. So he's going to have to tell him, that's not witnessing dinosaurs. And depending on how much he wishes that it were true, he's going to tell you, no, it is. It's just the same. The overwhelming percentage of paleontologist news is guesses, speculation, and forgery. That's for sure true. That's not a slander on paleontologists. Their news is not tawatur, and it's not even famous from its source. It is fundamentally a guess, because they found something. And then they built on that from after finding something, and they never witnessed what it is that they have arrived at. So they found something, and based on what they found, they arrived at a conclusion, and this conclusion they arrived at, they never witnessed it. So the overwhelming percentage of paleontologist news is guesses, speculation, and forgeries. If you say that to kafir, he's going to say, you are so ignorant. Because they were raised since they were children believing these things. So it must be for sure true. They heard it over and over and over again since they were in second grade, 7 years old. Over again. Cartoons, movies, documentaries, everything. Commercials. Must be true. It's not true. Yani, it's not confirmed, let me say. Not confirmed. No museum displays authentic fossils. You can't even see authentic fossils if you wanted to. You can go to every museum you can. And if they even claim to have authentic fossils, they won't let you lay your eyes on them. Though they may claim to have the real ones in a vault on the premises. But do not hold your breath. They will never allow you to see them. I try to have conversations with a number of, let me say, if they're not professional paleontologists, people who are very interested in dinosaurs and what they call prehistory. They are so weak. They are so weak. Their case is like, did you ever hear of a cowardly lion lions in reality, they're not cowards, but you can frighten a lion. You know why? Because lions so scary that no creature would dare to go step to him in the first place to test his nerve. So if something were to just run up into the face of a lion, will scare him. Because he never got challenged like that. That's how these paleontologists and these dinosaur enthusiasts are. It's like they take for granted that it's so popular to the people that you would be a moron to try to argue against this. I tried to talk to so many of them. None of them ever, they will try a little bit. All I had to do, ask them one question, two questions. That's it. End of discussion. I can't find any of them who are willing to go like toe to toe debate. And you know why I think it, I get this reaction from them? Because I don't argue with them according to their own fundamentals. If I argue with them in their own fundamentals, then they're going to talk all day. When I argue with them from these fundamentals, this is alien to them. Baffles them. They don't want to talk. So master this information. So many people think the kuffar are onto something. A lot of them, they are deluded. Not very knowledgeable about a lot of things. And a lot of things that they have knowledge about, they're wrong about a lot of it. Even if they're right about a lot of it, they're wrong about a lot of it too. Thus, if the original source were not a witnessed event, like dinosaurs, or the material of stars, they talk about that. They say stars are made of gases. How could they have any idea? Doesn't cross their mind that's a guess. Except it does cross their mind, those of them who have done a lot of study in that, a lot of research in that, and they have some amount of intelligence. They know that it's a guess. They have no way to test it. They can't witness it. They never got close to a star. They have no physical evidence. But they talk about it like they know for sure. He said, what would they gain from faking dinosaurs? It's an industry. They make money off of this. What do they gain from that? And they gain money from that. They gain grants from that. They gain one of the things that's very important to a kafir, in particular to some Muslims too, is fame, notoriety. That's worth a lot of money. Just the fame alone is worth a lot of money. The notoriety only. So, or like rotation and revolution. If the original source were not a witnessed event, like dinosaurs, or the material of stars, or rotation and revolution, that's in reference to the earth. We've been taught since we were little kids that the earth is spinning on its own axis and revolving around the sun. The earth is rotating on its own axis and revolving around the sun. It's not witnessed though. No one witnesses that. It's not witnessed by anyone. Not a single one of us. Not a single individual amongst us witnesses the earth moving anywhere. And it's not also, until today, if you didn't know, it's not a consensus of kuffar, non-Muslims, that there's rotation and revolution. It's not a consensus. There are those among them who debunk it, and they say the speed of the earth is 0. That means not moving. I saw on YouTube years ago, there were lots of videos about people debunking rotation and revolution. A lot of them. Just like guys, simple, regular people, not scientists. regular people were like, listen, I've thought about this, and how could it be? And they would show you, they would do different things on camera. All that stuff is gone. I searched for it. Looks like YouTube removed all of it. Anyone in these days who talks against rotation and revolution is blackballed from the industry. Blackballed, blacklisted. He's cuckoo. It's like a crackpot scientist. He's a mad scientist. He's crazy. Just like any scientists who don't agree with evolution, and any of them who confirm that there used to be giants, all of them are blacklisted. Not that they don't exist, but you don't have access to it easily. Only if you know that field, or you know how to find it, you know how to search, then you can find the people who have the dissenting opinion. Yes, confined to the image of conspiracy theorists. Or gravity. So wait, what's the footnote says here? No one has seen rotation or revolution, and there's no footage of either. Just no footage, no video footage. Also, I had a debate with a person about this issue. He said to me, and I had already researched. He said to me, "What do you do with all the video footage of the Earth moving?" Or maybe I said to him, "What footage?" I was just testing him. I already knew he didn't have any footage. He's assuming. Maybe I said to him, as I remember, "What footage?" He told me on YouTube. I told him, "Show me." He never showed me anything. You can find a lot of animation, though, about it. You won't find any real footage on it. No one witnessed it, and there's no footage for it. Supposing someone did witness this rotation or revolution, but no one ever did, those are so few people that it's still not Tawatur report. Like, what if somebody who's in so-called International Space Station said, "I saw the Earth spinning"? Like, he's one person. It's not going to be Tawatur. Or maybe there's 5 people. It's not going to be Tawatur. I don't know how many people they have there. Those are so few people that it's still not a Mutawatir report. Or gravity. Seeing objects fall is not witnessing gravity. That's what a person's going to tell you. He's going to say, "What you mean you never saw gravity? You see things fall all the time." So this is faulty reasoning. It's not because you see things fall that means you witness gravity. If you saw something fall, you witnessed that thing fall. Doesn't mean you witnessed the gravity. Gravity is claimed to be something outside of the body that pulls it down. So that's what nobody ever witnessed. No one has ever witnessed this outside force. And if you see like experiments they do to replicate gravity or defy gravity, none of that is what they're talking about. Like, for example, you know how there's a thing that spins really fast and you get stuck to the wall? Like if you go to the carnival, they use something like that. That's not gravity. Or also, for example, sometimes they take a person or some people in an airplane, take them up high. It's like a cargo plane. And then they dive in such a way that the people who were on the floor of the plane become like suspended. It's not because of some gravity or lack of gravity. It's because the airplane dipped, so their feet came off of the floor of the airplane. And some things like this they do. No one has ever witnessed this outside force, so the reports about it are not Tawatur. Reports about gravity are not Tawatur, and they do not promote knowledge. Also, it cannot be replicated and tested. It is absurd to say that this pool is generated by a spinning earth. What generates this pool, according to them, is the rotation of the earth on its axis. It makes us go towards the center of the earth. So how's that? Because what is witnessed of spinning things and what is replicable is that spinning things throw things from their center, not pull things towards their center. Something spinning doesn't pull you towards its center, throws away from its center. And there are many other arguments against this official theory. Also, gravity is officially a theory. Any person who is a devout so-called scientist, he knows gravity is a theory only until today. But they don't educate the people like that because they want the people to believe that it's real, and they want to believe it themselves that it's real. So they're just going to talk about it like it's real. Or black holes. Or evolution. And their claim evolution is a process that takes so long to manifest that no one has lived long enough to witness it. It is an unproven guess. Nothing they do or have is witnessing or replicating evolution. One of those people who believe in evolution, if you talk to them like I'm talking to you, they're going to say to you, no, we did witness it. We have the fossil records, we have DNA records, and we have all this, that. It's so strong when we put it all together, it amounts to witnessing. So if it were me, I'd say, no, it doesn't. Witnessing is by your senses. You didn't see it, you didn't hear it, you didn't smell it, you didn't taste it, you didn't feel it. It's a guess. It's an assumption. You never witnessed it. Don't put something in the place of witnessing. I'd say to them, it's your own standard, your own scientific standard to deem something even scientific that it can be witnessed. You never witnessed it. And that it's replicable and you can't replicate it also. You go against your own standards. Furthermore, clones are unconfirmed, and never a single one was ever made. For us religiously, we know they can't clone any living creature because they are unable to install a soul that will animate the body. According to them, they would grow something in a test tube even, not even inside necessarily a living creature's womb. In a scientific test tube. According to them, they'll grow something, or in their science fiction, they'll grow something in a test tube. How's it going to come to life? Or a Big Bang. Or human eggs. No one ever witnessed human eggs. If you tell me, well, we can see through the microscope, then we already had that lesson last week. That's not the witnessing that we're talking about. Whatever they saw in the microscope is something that they called it human eggs. They gave it a designation. We designate these human eggs. But humans don't have eggs, though. Or, if the original reporters were not as many as described, the big number of conveyors came later, like the news of the slaying of Jesus, became a massive report later, not from the beginning. Or the Jewish claim that Moses sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that his revealed law would never be abrogated. Such news would not promote knowledge. In fact, such news could not escape the clutches of ignorance, doubt, and skepticism. Wallahu a'lam. We'll stop there. I was hoping we could cover news from a prophet today, but we don't have the time for it. Maybe I skipped some questions. Let me see. Do you have any question I can answer for you? You said, what do we say about the consensus of all schools? Yani. Consensus of mujtahids, we know it's right, okay, yeah, but it's a mental necessity for them to be accurate. Your question is not clear for me because you said we know it's right, so I don't see where's the question after that. We know the consensus is correct because of the religious evidence that proves that. So after that, I don't understand where's your question. So if you want to follow up, go ahead. So wasn't there a scholar who went to the moon There's some reports about some awliya, some of the saints. It was said that some of them went to the moon. I don't have any names though. It reached me that one wali went to the moon. He picked up the dirt on the moon. He said this dirt is useless. It means you can't grow anything on it with it. Question: is it like the case of the Christians' faith, their consensus? I don't remember what this question is linked to. He said, is it a mental necessity for if all scholars agreed on something that they must be right? Not by itself, by the religious proof. It's not mental necessity that if all the scholars agree to something that they must be right. It's by religious proof we knew that. If someone asks, what's the proof that the consensus is always right? We don't say, the proof is this mental argument here. Rather, the proof is the religious proof from the Quran and the hadiths about ijma'. Then some scholars did link the ijma' of the scholars to tawatur after that. Some scholars said, if it were possible for the nation of Muhammad to agree on a mistake, then it would be possible for them to hide the religion. And then from there they made an argument. Their argument here is linked to tawatur. And since tawatur is definitely true, they said, therefore, the ijma' is confirmed to be accurate always. Does the moon have its own light? Yes. And what I said was, it's not a mental necessity itself that the ijma' is correct. It's religious evidence that makes us know the ijma' is correct. We knew the ijma' is correct by religious evidence, not by intellectual argument. How do we know Prophet Muhammad is the last prophet? By religious evidence, not by intellectual argument. How do we know hellfire and paradise don't come to an end? By religious evidence, not by intellectual argument. How do we know consensus is always accurate? By religious evidence, not by intellectual argument. But some scholars made an intellectual argument for the ijma' by relating the ijma' to the tawatur. But I'm not even right now ready to present their argument to you. You're welcome. But it's in At-Tafsiru fi Din. We went over At-Tafsiru fi Din, about the 73 sects. He has that argument in there. Any other question?